It's hard to believe we're at the season finale of the third season of Picture Lock, but it's here. It's been my pleasure bringing you film reviews, interviews, panels, and in-depth breakdowns for these 30 episodes. I don't think it will be too long until we start up season 4, and I'll definitely have reviews on the website and YouTube channel in between. Today, we'll talk with 3 DC web series creators about their incredibly entertaining shows. I'll talk with Otessa Ghadar about her series, Orange Juice in Bishop's Garden, Phil Cook, creator of Malice the web series, and Anthony Anderson, creator of Anacostia. That's all ahead on Picture Lock. As a lover of the 90s, I find Orange Juice and Bishop's Garden to be a refreshing throwback to my formative years. A high school version of Salute Your Shorts for the modern era, but regardless, a binge-worthy series. Otessa Ghadar, thank you for coming on Picture Lock and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure. So one of the first questions I always love to ask is, when did you first fall in love with film?
Oh gosh, I think I just always had a love of both watching films and making films. It took me a little bit longer to realize that that was a viable career path, but always from a young age really enjoyed them. I remember in even junior high making videos for Latin class.
Yeah.
Like really ridiculous, sort of instead of writing a paper, can we make a video? And the teacher
Right.
would begrudgingly sort of agree, would make these ridiculous videos, sort of reenacting the death of Caesar.
Were you like in your family, you were the one that always had the handy cam? That was me.
I definitely remember the handy cam,
Yeah.
yes. And I was always documenting things, always taking pictures, always sort of viewing things through a lens.
Yeah.
So I think the writing was on the wall from the early days.
Awesome. All right. So if you could just give us like a description of Orange Juice and Bishop's Garden and even the genesis of the project, because I think that's an interesting story as well.
Absolutely. In terms of Orange Juice and Bishop's Garden, I think our tagline is growing up, getting down, and coming out in the grunge era. So it's about being a teenager in web series form, but in the very last generation before the invention of the internet. I really liked this idea of doing a web series, which was very sort of new and cutting edge, about the last generation that was still sort of analog, which is, kind of my generation.
Right.
And I think I saw my brother and sister, growing up post-internet and seeing how that was like really different. And I thought, it'd be really cool if we had something that bridged that gap in a new format.
Yeah, and I think it really does that because, I mean, like, that was my middle school, high school,
Yeah.
so I totally relate to the characters and just, like, how everything looks. And I can really geek out on this whole thing. But I guess in terms of actually creating, what made you want to go for I guess you kind of just explained, but the 90s. And I think one of the things that you really hit is, like, the look and feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a time piece, like an era, genre, but like how do you hit all of that in terms of the look, the clothes, the wardrobe, the music?
I mean, certainly with great difficulty. It's funny when you say, oh, it's a period piece, but it's, it still is a period piece. It's just
Yeah,
not
20
that
years.
far ago. Yeah.
I know.
But definitely there was a lot of sort of binge collecting old phones, corded phones, rotary phones, just trying to make sure that everything was in keeping. Fortunately, I have some hoarding tendencies that were then helped by all of my friends. When people know that you're looking for stuff from the period, and they're like,
Right.
oh, well, I've got this, you can, so that was certainly very helpful. And the music, I had been a DJ through high school and also through college, so the music was something that I really had an affinity for of that time, because I remembered sort of fondly the soundtrack to growing up, and having the opportunity to spotlight bands that maybe were a little bit more kind of left of the dial That was great for me, to be able to reach out to bands that I liked and say, hey, would you be interested in being in this show? So that was really fun too.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you created this when you were in college, correct?
I created this when I was in grad school.
Okay.
And it actually ended up becoming my thesis project at grad school.
Okay.
Which I had to fight for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because especially now, web series are so much more common, which makes me very happy because it's obviously a medium that I have an affinity for, that I love, and seeing it kind of grow is really like magnificent and positive. But at the time, there were like maybe 3, 4. And I don't think I would have ever really have thought of the idea if it weren't for the fact that Marshall Herskovitz of Quarter Life actually came to my film school and talked to us. And being a My So-Called Life fanatic from a young age, and then seeing him speak was just really fantastic. And I really enjoyed the Quarter Life kind of experience that was built. So I knew we had always heard at film school about the decline of the box office and like what that meant. But I had an inkling watching him speak and just, kind of seeing the way that, again, like my brother and sister, the way that they were accessing content. It's like, this is the way that it's going to go. This is the way that people are going to be accessing stories. We're going to go to television over IP. All of our viewing is going to be radically different. And so I just wanted to make sure that I did something in my thesis that kind of reflected my belief in that model, my belief in that future trend.
Right.
But again, when there aren't that many web series, and you're saying this like 7 years ago, it's like, well, wait, you want to create something and like really low budget and then put it up on the internet for free so that anyone can watch it. I mean, it wasn't, the infrastructure wasn't there. You just sounded like a lunatic.
Right. But not anymore. Now you're like, oh, she saw the future.
Yeah, and it's so nice to see all the amazing shows that are available, because things that wouldn't get greenlit in other sort of circumstances, now they have a platform and a voice, and they're able to find their audience, and I think that's really gratifying.
So what do you think is one of the most gratifying and the most challenging parts of actually creating a web series?
I would say, well, it's funny because my production company, we also distribute other web series, and then we also have the DC Web Fest, which is coming up.
Yeah.
And so sort of from consulting with other web series and just being a lover of the format, I think that the biggest problem I see is what I call the season 1 curse. Just getting more than one season is probably the biggest challenge. You just constantly, it's like you're trying to run a marathon on quicksand when creating a web series, so just you're running, and you're just like trying not to fall behind and trying not to sink, but really just the maintenance of your story over time. And I mean that not just in terms of, do you have an idea that is sustainable, but also, are you able to rally everyone's focus? Have you thought about your long-term plan? I would say that that's truly the most difficult thing, is just making sure that you have something that people can binge watch.
Right. And I guess I still want to know what you think is the most gratifying part of it. But that was one of the questions I was going to ask, which is, what do you think that people that are coming up with, I want to do a web series, I think you really hit the nail on the head of just making sure that you have enough written so that you'll be able to continue. Because I think that's one of the keys. Binge watching is like incredible. So, okay. Really quickly before we have to stop, what's the most gratifying part of OJBG?
Oh, that's such a hard question because there are so many. I mean, there are so many moments and experiences that have been so gratifying. But I would probably say the fact that at the end of it, at the end of 7 years and 7 seasons, that I was able to actually write a final episode, which was terrifying and magnificent and all of these things, to know that you've built something that you've actually been able to see through, and that you've been able to keep all of these amazing people around you through the show. That we had so many of the same actors there and so many of the same crew people there that believed in what we were building. So at the end, I think the thing that was the most gratifying is that as much as it was a coming of age story, I think in the end it ended up writing all of us, or at least certainly me. I felt like it was a story that had written me as much as I had written it. And that was really powerful.
That is. And on that note, we're going to bring on some of the cast and crew from OJVG. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Mike Parsons with DCFilmdom.com, and you are watching Picture Lock.
And we're back with some of the cast and crew of Orange Juice and Bishop's Garden. Billy Krishan and Liz Ghadar, welcome to Picture Lock.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
having us.
Yeah, so Liz, let's start with you. You're the production designer. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you did for the series?
I basically invented sets. Sometimes it was good. We would go location scouting, we'd find a perfect place outdoors, or sometimes even a perfect place indoors. But after a while, that doesn't always happen. So often it was recreating what you wanted the viewer to think in a small space. It was lots of fun. Difficult and really an adrenaline rush, but lots of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess Otessa has you to thank for helping it to look so 90s.
Yes.
Now, that wasn't that long ago. Trust me.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. All right, so Billy, and you played Brianna in the show. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little about your character?
Well, Brianna was this spunky force. She crushed on somebody who she definitely couldn't have, and that was kind of a really fun dynamic because somebody else crushed on her. It was this really mixed up thing, but I definitely think she was a bit of a wild one.
Yeah. And so what did you enjoy most about being a part of the web series?
I definitely learned a lot thanks to Otessa. She taught me a lot about acting, about film, about what it takes to create a web series, a lot about the dynamics of creating a space that you don't necessarily have. For example, the rave scene that there was in one of the seasons on the show, it looks massive, but it was a lot smaller.
It was basically like one step up from a closet. You would never know.
Right.
It was a challenge for both production design, but also for acting. And there's like, okay, guys, just pretend that this is a massive cavernous space. That's easy, right?
Yeah. I think that's part of filmmaking, right? Like, 90% is problem solving. So it's like, how can you solve this problem to make it work? And then it comes out and it's like, it's awesome. So Otessa, in terms of, coordinating schedules and then with the cast and crew, like what did you do, or what's your, how do you approach, production, scheduling, and contacting everyone?
Oh gosh, well, I would say that one thing that I learned really quickly, and actually this is sort of a throwback to what Billy was just saying about, learning. The learning went all the way around. No one really knew what a web series, we still don't really know what exactly a web series is, like how it's inscribed.
Right.
And actually I ended up writing a textbook about the experience because I thought there was really no sort of DIY manual. And I wanted to save people some of the learning by mistakes that I did. But I would say in particular that we all learned together, which was really kind of great.
Yeah. That's awesome. What's the name of the book?
Oh, it's called The Wild West of Film.
Okay.
And it's really the whole script to screen process.
Is it available on Amazon?
Yeah, you can
you got to make the plugs.
Yeah, sorry, it's available on Amazon. Yeah, and it's being used by American University in their curriculum, so it's sort of nice to know.
That is awesome.
That actually there are universities that are teaching web series now.
Right.
It's super cool.
Right, definitely. So this is a question for everyone. What is one of your fondest memories just being on set? Like, and specific to your, either your character or, as a production designer and as a creator. What's one of those fond memories that you have that you're just like, oh, I love this time? Whoever has it first, go.
Billy, you can go first.
Otessa gave me my very first makeout scene. And it was really interesting because it was kind of a budding thing between, it was an interesting dynamic in real life as well. And I just remember her being like, okay, I know it's gonna be a bit awkward, but once you get in the flow of it, and I'm sure everybody knows film, you do tons of takes. So just takes and takes of making out. And so thanks, Otessa, for helping me make out on film.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a funny story. Although I have to say that the rave scene was up there in terms of. I mean, it looked amazing. But yeah, when you know sort of the story behind the scenes, you're like, really? That was something like.
Yeah, working in a toaster oven comes to mind. It was hot and small.
It's really hot. But I do also have some. Actually, I'll let you go first.
Well, I was hoping for a little extra time to go through them all, but I have lots. And I think what I really liked best in general is that even when suddenly things would go wrong, someone would be sick or something, especially for me, oh, gee, that prop, it was supposed to be here now. People relaxed and it actually all went well anyway. I was just thinking of the time that I forgot to bring the jar of the bottom of the liquor cabinets. And suddenly at the last minute, it had to materialize. And the scene went beautifully, even though 5 minutes before, I was sure it was going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And yet everything coalesced, everyone relaxed, everyone put his best effort forward. And I think that's really what I remember most, is that everything magically, well, obviously it was not really magic.
Right.
A lot of it was due to Otessa, but everything seemed to coalesce. And it made for wonderful, wonderful memories.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things that I want to see is, like we were talking about earlier, the web series is kind of its own magical beast that no one really knows where to put. And even in film festivals, it seems as though no one really knows where to put a web series. So do you actually, because do you watch the whole series? What do you display? So it seems as though web series actually have to have their own festivals. So can you just talk a little bit, and all of you maybe, on your experience with festival runs and why maybe that is?
Well, I completely agree with that statement, which is actually why I started the DC Web Fest, because I thought, especially at the time, there was a couple in LA, but nothing out here. And what I love about web series is that they don't need to be only in LA or New York, and we're seeing amazing content coming out of Missouri, wherever, So having a specialized festival that's really built for what a web series is important. And I also remember 7 years ago when I was saying, I was trying to do this thing and no one really knew what it was and my teachers didn't really want me to do it. What I remember also is that when we had content, you're taught that you do the festival run and then that kind of springboards you to the next thing. But so many of these festivals were, they were for short films, they were for feature films, and they had these sort of requirements where it had to be a premiere. Now, that doesn't help you if you can't put your web series out on the web because you're trying to make a festival run. Right. No, your web series needs to be on the web, so you can't wait around for I mean, it just, the markets didn't fit. So I think it's super important to have the market that does fit.
Yeah.
I think as well, the nature of a web series is different. Motion pictures, everyone's thinking of a big screen. And with web series, it's much more intimate. So the feeling is different, and what you put in, well, not that I make them, but what the idea is, it's a very one-to-one relationship. And therefore, they don't seem to be in the same category to me. If you want to go to a motion picture festival, yes, it has to be a big screen. And it's nice to see web series on big screens.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you're there with either your computer monitor or your phone. Yeah. And it's a bit like looking at, the old photographs when they used to be small. It's very intimate.
Yeah.
And motion pictures can be, but even when they go to do a close-up and that person's head is humongous, it's not quite the same thing.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we got to wrap things up. But if you all could let people know where they can find you, see not only the web series, but get in contact with you if you want to.
Absolutely. So, should I give my website and
whatever you want to give?
Sure. So you can definitely check out the show, which has 7 seasons, at ojinbg.com. And we also have our Twitter, which is OJ Bishop's Garden, and our YouTube channel is 2020 Productions DC. And you can check out the DC Web Fest, which is going to be coming up Saturday, May 2nd. That website is dcwebfest.co, just co, not com.
Okay.
And you can look me up on Facebook at Billy Krishan. That's my actor page. And you can also find my jewelry website at Zin and Zealous on Etsy.
You may remember my next guest from this year's Rosebud Film Festival episode with his entry from his web series. I did a little binge watching, and it's very easy to get engrossed in the Malice series. So to get a little more in depth into it, Phil Cook is back on Picture Lock. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So as I said, I binged out on this, and I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I really love is how you've created just this character who has so many different layers. So, we can skip all the when did you fall in love with film. We already talked about that. Get straight into it. Okay. So in terms of creating this character, what exactly went into what was your mindset in terms of writing?
Partial was practical. I was trying to come up with a character that I thought would appeal to an internet using audience. And at the time when I started writing the story, my kids were about the age of Alice and her sister. And they were spending a lot of time watching Shane Dawson videos and odd things on YouTube. And I thought, that's the audience. These young kids, these young girls are watching. And of course, they liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they liked horror and macabre and mysteries. And I thought, I want to make a show that would appeal to them. And the house is the house that we actually shoot the show in. It's my house. So to some extent, the characters are kind of patterned off of my two girls, except...
Did they realize that?
Yeah, they did, actually. Too much, well, that's a whole nother discussion. But to a point, the context. But then they deviate radically. I mean, my house is actually not haunted, and we don't have ghost boys, and we don't keep the machine guns on the kitchen table that often.
Right.
So.
Okay. So what would you say is one of the most fulfilling things about creating the series, as well as the most challenging?
Well, I'll start with what's fulfilling. What I found really intriguing was this idea of condensed storytelling, and where you're trying to do something that normally would take 22 minutes or 40 minutes in longer form television, but do it in this sort of much tighter shorthand way in 6 or 7 minutes, and make it so compelling, because it was going to be watched on the internet where all these distractions coming at you, Twitter and whatever, that I didn't want to give anybody a reason to click off and pause. I wanted it to be really compelling and interesting and a cliffhanger, so you had to see the next one.
Right.
So that was really, it was fun, it was exciting. And I think it does work. You can hold an audience and tell a story with some detail. It makes the audience work a little harder for it. So that was cool. And the other part, when I would make features, it would take 2 or 3 years to get a feature done. And these, because we would finish an episode and get them out there, you're getting feedback, not that it's changing the direction of the story, because it's not an interactive thing to that extent, but you're getting feedback from your audience. Yeah. And so you're building your audience as, the episodes are going out there, and it's an interactive dialogue, which I've never had before. Back in the old days when we made a feature, you'd give it to a distribution company, and maybe you'd find the reviews 2 or 3 years later. Maybe you'd find it showing up on WDCA on TV or on Telemundo. It's like, oh look, they're on our show, because you don't know.
Right.
So you're in a vacuum.
Right.
So that ability to interact with people was really exciting. In terms of challenges, it seems like every project I do is a smaller budget than the previous one. This is not by choice. And the whole reason I ended up on doing a web series was because the vehicles that we had done in the past, the way we used to raise money to do independent features, the markets that existed for them were consistently getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And, and I had to turn my back on trying to do a theatrical feature. It just was impossible. And turn my back on trying to get stuff on cable and TV. It just became impossible. And then this new thing came out, the web, and this concept of web series. And so we kind of went in that direction, and then, using these technologies to do things that in the past were so hard and so expensive to do. When you were shooting film and editing film and doing all your post-production in film, now you've got these high-quality HD cameras that shoot in low light, and embracing these new technologies and embracing the ability to do visual effects, which back, when I was making features before, was really hard to do. Not saying it's not hard now, but with a lot of knowledge and care, you can really do remarkable things. And if anybody, and the amount of money we spent on this show is ridiculous. So
Ridiculous, like in
terms of budget
goodness.
wise,
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, we're spending almost nothing on
Yeah.
creating the show, but it looks like there's a lot of money in the show.
Right.
So
That's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about as well. Two questions. One, you talked about writing and ending the episode with some kind of hook. So I'm wondering, do you write with the hook in mind? Like, do you plot it out? Like, I want to get to, end on this point, and then you write everything backwards. And then I'll ask my second question after you answer that.
I always know the ending. I know how it's going to start, and I know the ending.
Mm-hmm.
The in-between stuff I'm not so clear on. And it is a process of discovery, because I realize at the end of every 6 to 8 minutes, it's got to have a, oh my gosh,
Right.
moment. I don't necessarily know exactly what those are. They just, it's really weird, because after a while, when you really get comfortable with your characters, they start telling you what to do. And it's just kind of I know it sounds a little schizophrenic and weird, but they actually start driving the bus.
Right.
And, this one thing that happened really surprised me. You're going to interview Katie Benson, her character Caroline. I always knew she was going to be this particular character, but about halfway through the story, all of a sudden I realized there was something I could do with her that surprised even me. It's like, oh my God, what if we did this thing? Which will completely weird people out and completely change your perspective on everything that you saw before. And that was not initially in the original story, but then I realized it was a great opportunity to give people a WTF moment.
Right.
So.
Well, that's cool. I guess one of the other things is there is so much that goes on post-production in regard to, you shoot on a green screen, like you said, you're shooting in the back of your house, and you have this amazing set that looks like it's like a cemetery behind the house and all that kind of stuff. So can you just talk about what it's like? And we might have talked about this a little bit before, but creating the whole world, because I think as someone said before, it's just there's a certain level of kind of going into this rabbit hole of what is Malice, and you just get ingrained in it.
Well, one of the things I actually do like about the show, it is its own world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an odd little world, because it's our world, but then all these really weird little things kind of plug into it. Like in this most recent series, we had this creepy barn, which you'd think, oh, how hard can it be to find a barn? Well, in Northern Virginia, believe it or not, it's hard to find a barn unless you have the money to pack everybody up in a vehicle and drive down to Southern Virginia and put people up in hotels and feed them for 2 or 3 days to find a barn that may or may not be right. So we built a barn for the show, and it's a partial set. And then, of course, I use visual effects and miniatures to flesh it out. And you haven't gotten to that part yet. But when you do, it's like, whoa. Because I needed this barn. It's like a Hitchcock thing. It's got to be perfect. Because the barn becomes this sort of big, ominous thing. It's like, what's going on in the barn? It couldn't just be anybody's crappy little barn. It had to be a barn that was little sketchy. So we built that. And so what I try to do with this show is everything that the characters or the actors actually physically involved with is a real piece of space. It may not be much of a barn, but it's a barn. So where the critical stuff, the talking heads, where the real drama is taking place in the face, that's always framed against something real, something that doesn't feel artificial or constrained. It's when we step back a little bit and put it in geographic context, that's when the visual effects come into place, and that's sometimes we'll drag out the blue screen or we'll do some sort of set extension or whatever, just to keep it in context. Because once you know where you're at, you don't need that anymore, because it's all about this.
Right, exactly.
So.
All right, well, I'd love to talk to some of the cast members of the series, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll bring them on.
All right, thanks.
Hi, this is Nell Minow from MovieMom.com, and you're watching Picture Lock.
And we're back with some of the cast of Malice, the web series, Katie Benson and Dave Coyne. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Hello.
So, Katie, we'll start with you. Can you just tell us a little bit about your character?
Well, my character is a very interesting character. She basically lives out by herself with her grandmother, and she's basically looking for any sort of human connection, which she's been kind of denied, like in the past few, well, I would say in a little while. She's very strange. That's the best way to describe her. She's very strange. But then she finds people who she can relate to, and of course Alice, and that's very exciting for her, that new human connection of someone who just stumbles upon her out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. But in this world, strange is normal, right?
That's true.
All right, Dave, what about you?
When you say in this world, you mean our current life on Earth? Strange is normal? Is that what you're saying? Or do you mean the series?
You know, I'm going for the series, but, you know, it could go both ways.
I think it applies to both. Well, what's interesting is Katie's explanation of her character describes my life. I also live with my grandmother. I'm not very good with, you know. No, Phil and I's relationship is actually pretty interesting. We had a brief connection, I think, in 92, early 90s. He was doing a movie, and I accidentally, I guess, kind of got a bit part on that, and then he called me back up to play, I think he's a misunderstood, desperate character named Mike Cheney. He's considered to be the villain, but he's more of an entrepreneur, right? He's really just trying to find his own niche in life, and I don't know how much you want to give away. Probably not a lot, because that's
I think he has a certain
part of why you'd watch it.
A certain amount of sympathy, you know. It's like, and that's what makes him, I think, an interesting antagonist, because he's not like he's just trying to make a living.
Right. So in his head, it really seems like a business
into his
thing.
life and is just messing with his life.
Right.
And he's got to do something about it, basically.
So, guys, one thing I always wonder is, one, how did you get hooked up with Phil in the series, and what attracted you to the material?
Well, for me, it was I got a text message from Brittany Martz, and she said, "Do you want to audition for this web series that I'm involved with?" And then I was like, "Well, what's it called?" And she was like, "Malice." And I looked it up, and I watched the first episode, and then I binge watched the first 2 seasons, and I just sat there at my computer like, go, next one, next one, next one. And then I was like, yeah, I want to audition. So I showed up at Phil's house and auditioned for him, and it was a fun audition. And I was like, if this guy hires me, I'm doing this.
Her audition's actually on her YouTube channel, and we'd put out an ad on Craigslist.
Right.
And we saw a lot of talent, a lot of actors who'd come in, but when she came in, it's just like, boom. Done. And if you see the role, and if you do go back and look at her audition, you'll completely understand why. So
nice.
And then Dave, my gosh, I've known him. We were just so young, and we did this sci-fi film back in the '90s called Invader, and then
which I haven't seen.
yet. You still haven't seen it?
I have not.
Oh my God!
But I'm going to get it on Amazon.
Yeah, you absolutely have to. Even though you're only in it for 12 seconds.
Hey. 12 seconds.
Did he get blown out?
No, he plays this young cub reporter who just gets chewed out by his foul-mouthed editor. Literally, you're on screen for like 8 to 12 seconds.
Yeah.
But then a buddy of mine was working with Dave, because Dave does a lot of impressions and just wild, interesting acting parts. And he said, you know, I worked with this really crazy guy. He says he knew you back in the day. It's like, really? What's his name? He says, oh my God. And then I looked him up, and I found he'd had a YouTube channel out there and been doing amazing YouTube videos for years. And I called him, and I was thinking, you know what? If this guy can do impersonations of Jack Nicholson or Christopher Walken, he can play this crazy redneck guy for me.
Because the crazy redneck character, Cheney, really wants to be a stand-up comedian. I mean, that was sort of the backstory, I think, that I
didn't
developed.
know that was
so
your
the whole
motivation.
time he's doing all of this sort of, I don't
sense
know,
that.
criminal-ish activity. He just wants to be on stage doing impressions of Katharine Hepburn, which drove the
I did want
character.
to write a scene for you doing the old-time rock and roll Tom Cruise thing.
Oh,
with
okay.
Cheney in his underwear, drinking light beer.
It's not too
with
late.
that hat.
Nice. So, Dave, what attracted you to the material? Obviously, there's a friendship here, and we can see there's years of it. So, but what attracted you to the material?
I needed the work.
And we pay a lot. We pay a lot.
No.
It was a life-changing salary.
Yeah, I did have a history with Phil, but also just I was impressed with the series, as I think anybody who sees it is just. And then it's just amazing. I don't know how much of the tricks you want to give away, but just how much you yourself are pulling off. I understood that because I kind of had a solo, YouTube channel, one-man bandish kind of thing. And then when I saw what Phil was doing, I thought, yeah, that's what I want to be when I grow up or grow down. I mean, it's a child. I don't know how to really describe it. But so I came in for the audition, and the audition was fun. But what I also liked is that I think you took into account Brittany's input. It wasn't just, I'm the director, I say who's kind of, you really sort of took into account what she thought. Is that going to work? That kind of thing. And I was also impressed by that.
That's actually when we did his audition, I really wanted her to be there because I trust her instincts, and she found Katie, she found so many of these people. And I just wanted to see the two of them go back and forth, and just such weird, fun stuff was going back and forth. I said, oh, this is going to be great, this is going to be interesting. And it wasn't actually quite the way I wrote the character. But it didn't matter because it was taking on a life of its own.
Right.
And when something's working, you just go with it.
Driving its own bus.
It starts driving its own bus. It's like
right.
you take it down that path, because he was a little bit, he wasn't, I can't even describe, I don't even know what he was before, because now he's you. So
okay.
That was definitely working.
One question in terms of like the hats, the wardrobes that that Alice actually wears, and even the Roman soldiers, I guess, all that kind of stuff. Like, where did you get all that? And can you buy like the little bunny rabbit hat?
Everybody wants a bunny rabbit hat. They're custom made by my wife, and she takes her like
Really?
5 or 8 hours to do each one. So there are only 4 that were ever made, and we gave them away for Kickstarter prizes. They don't exist in the world. People say, oh, you ought to manufacture them. Yeah, if I want to invest $10,000 in a Chinese company and get, fill up cases of them, which I'll sell 6 and have the other 6,000 sitting in my garage.
Right.
But the shirts you can buy. The shirts you can buy on our web series. And it's a great shirt, and I love the emblem. So, particularly looks great on women, and, and there's a more discreet version, like athletic versions for guys and what have you. And then as far as the Roman costumes are concerned, it's kind of funny. I was going to make this big Roman epic like 12 years ago, and I bought all this armor. I bought a lot of armor like an idiot. And of course, we never got the money. And it sat there, and most of it packed in grease for like 10 years in my garage. And I thought, that was one of the things I'm writing now. I got to get the Romans in there. I got all this armor.
That's what I love, though, because like you never know in life when something is going to come back. Because it is a little bit random. Granted,
it's out there.
Yeah, but it works for this show.
Well, it works because, Dad was in the Roman thing, and Alice is such a history nut, and just it fits her whole wild imagination. And then I found this crazy, wonderful group of Roman reenactors here in Northern Virginia, and I became good friends with them. And they would come out, and their armor was infinitely cooler than mine. And if you see these guys in the show, you've probably seen them.
Right.
They look awesome. I mean, they've got the beards and the shaved heads, and they're all rugged. I couldn't cast this if I tried. And they come, and they've already got the whole shtick down, and so so that's how the Romans ended up.
Okay.
You work with what you can get, man.
Okay, so where do you all see the future of the show? Where do you want it to go? Where do you want your characters to go? You guys get to tell them.
Well, I've been doing this web series thing for a while, and it's a struggle for everybody because nobody really has much of a budget, and the monetizing thing is the universal question: how do you guys make money? Well, you don't really make much money. I mean, we've made some money, but not enough to justify all this huge amount of work. The real key is to jump to TV, or when I say TV, working with either with it's Amazon Online or HBO Online or these sort of other things. We're actually circling around that. I'm going to LA next week. We're talking about pitching, making an arrangement with people. They can get an audience with people that I can't. I can't get Paramount to look at my stuff.
Right.
But these people who've shown expressed interest in the show actually have that ability if we come to terms. So, what are the odds of that happening? Really nil, but they can get conversations that I could never get.
Right.
Which is really huge. Like everything, it's all about access.
Right.
So that's kind of exciting. So yeah, of course you'd like to grow. I mean, I would like to do another season. I don't know if anybody else is game for another season. People are scattering all over the globe.
Gotcha.
It's tough, particularly when you do a continued narrative and you need these same characters to stick it out.
Yeah.
It's not like you can, all of a sudden the part of Katie's going to be played by somebody else. I mean, we went through that, and it's excruciating.
Yeah. The sister, right?
And I imagine, you know that story. Exactly.
Okay.
That was painful. But I'm sure you wouldn't mind if this
I
thing
wouldn't mind.
took off. I'm sure Dave would be willing to come back from San Diego. If this
I'm counting on it.
Awesome.
I don't have anything else, Phil.
Well, there you go. Oh.
Seriously. No, it would be interesting, although, to buy the rights of the character from you and then do a kids spin-off show, you know.
Oh, like
Mike
when
Chaney
Pee
trying
Wee
to
Herman goes bad.
trying to give back to the community, you know.
This is crazy. All right, guys, this has been really fun talking
Thanks,
to
Kevin.
everybody. Thanks for coming on the show,
Thank you.
guys.
It's cool.
Again,
Good
I'm
fun.
a big fan, so thanks.
Thanks. Got to watch the rest.
I will.
All right.
All right. So now again,
Hi, I'm Dean Rogers with TheRogersReview.com, and you're watching Picture Lock.
my next guest is no stranger to Picture Lock. DC native Anthony Anderson is a writer, director, actor, and producer of the hit series Anacostia. The show is available on YouTube and Montgomery County TV. Anthony, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, I'm giving you Benning Road, what they would call Benning Road trade today, you know,
Wow.
with the beard and everything. Yes.
Can I tell you,
It's a mess.
every time that we sit down together, whether it's on a red carpet or it's here, it is a blast. So I'm looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, and the common denominator is I had been drinking. So, yeah, this is like today.
Okay, so this is going to be great. You have been drinking because explain why.
Okay, I was at a tuxedo fitting, and at the store, they provided champagne while I was trying on tuxedos.
Right.
So I had about 5 glasses. So this should be real interesting.
This should be. Now, the reason that you were trying on a tuxedo is for the Indie Series Awards, correct?
Right.
So
in
can
LA.
you explain, and congratulations, by the way,
Thank
for
you.
Anacostia
Thank you.
receiving this award, or the nomination.
Thank you. We received 5 nominations. I think this is our 31 in total since the show started.
Wow.
And the Indie Series Awards is our version pretty much of the Emmys or the Oscars. It's for online content for web creators in the drama and comedy categories. And it's put on by Roger Newcomb and Kevin Mulcahy of We Love Soaps TV. So this is the second year it's been in LA. So a little bit of pressure to look good on LA red carpet. So I finally got the tuxedo. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I look forward to
And
hearing
some
that.
free champagne.
Anacostia took home some statues.
Yeah, we have a total, we've won a total of 6 so far. 6.
Okay.
6. Yeah, so hopefully we will win another.
Okay, so for the audience and that hasn't seen Anacostia, can you just explain what Anacostia is all about?
Sure. Well, Anacostia is a 10-episode dramatic web soap. It's much in line with the soap operas of One Life to Live, General Hospital. It takes place, of course, in Anacostia, which is a suburb in Washington, D.C. It has everything that you would want: suspense, intrigue, drama, mystery, sexy men, sexy women, great story. We have a super guest star by the name of Martha Byrne from As the World Turned, 2-time Emmy Award winner. And we're currently in our 4th season right now, which is amazing.
That is amazing. And one of the things that I love is that as a creative, this came from your mind, your brain, and now, just seeing where it's gone. How do you feel about that, and what inspired you to create it?
Well, the inspiration, I feel great. I feel great about it because being that it's our 4th season, there were a lot of shows that we started out with that stopped after one season for various reasons, and for us to still be going and to still be getting recognition and to still be building a fan base is really amazing, because you can't get network television shows to do that most of the time. And the inspiration just came from the fact that there aren't that many soap operas are great. The one thing that I've always had a problem with soap operas is that there aren't faces like mine featured predominantly in roles on soap operas. It's like sometimes we'll come and we'll go and we aid a story, but we tend to never lead a story. And that was one thing that I've always found rather odd and kind of peculiar about the soap opera genre, was that there weren't that many, not only faces of African American color, but also Latino and so have you. So there weren't that much diversity there. And so I just decided that if you want change, you have to be the change that you want to see. So I created the show.
You know, one of the things that I appreciate about you is that you're a student of the craft. And, you know, I follow you on Facebook and all that good stuff, and sometimes we go back and forth. But what I've noticed is that, you know, even with Empire, you're making comments, or, you know, did you see, what was the soap opera you were talking about the other day? But it seems as though you study what's going on so that you can make Anacostia even better.
Right. I think in order for you to do a show, any show, I think you have to be true to what it is that you're doing. And I think a lot of times people can sit back and see a show like mine, or see a show like Malice, or see a show like some of these other shows that are on the web, and they can say, I have a camera, and I have some friends who can act, or who they think can act, and they put together a show, and it's just like, it's more of a detriment to the community more than something that's enhancing it. And so the problem I had with Empire, and I know like a lot of people are like, oh God, like somebody who don't like Empire. It's not that I don't like Empire. I just feel as though a lot of things that have happened in Empire have been borrowed from soaps like Dynasty and Desperate Housewives, and especially this last finale, which like drove me crazy, because as a student of this, you're sort of looking back like, okay, they killed him like Eva Longoria killed her father, or this is a segue to this, or this is a segue to this. And everyone knows that any doctor that misdiagnoses ALS really needs to be kicked out of all type of medical professions.
Right.
But we all know that Terrence Howard is sometimes a detriment to his own cause. So we have to put ALS in place just in case he acts up, and we can have a way to get rid of him. So now that the show is a bona fide hit, and Terrence is saying, you know, I can now ask for a little bit more money.
Right.
I don't have to have ALS now. So, right. But notice the writer said, I don't have ALS, I have something bad is not as bad. That's just a back door for Terrence. If you act up,
right,
you might have a brain aneurysm and you're gone, just like that. So that's what you do.
Oh my gosh.
Now that is one thing that I will implore on my own show. It's like, somebody give me a problem, you will have an illness real quick.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about Anacostia, and more so as a web series creator. How do you create the buy-in where you're building this fan base where people are literally on their breaks, you know, in a cubicle, Anacostia, watching, you know, I guess, is it the writing, or is it also social media outreach? Like, how do you...
Well, I think it starts with the writing. I think it starts with, you have to treat your audience as if they're smart, and you have to treat them as if you have to... It's one thing to be African-American and write for an African-American audience, but when you write to write, different cultures and different races can identify with what it is that you're doing. And when they can identify with you and they say, oh, okay, this is identifiable to people, not just African American. When you can do that in a show, you can engage your audience a little bit better, to where if I'm talking to you about something, say if I'm talking to you about something that is predominantly was made for African Americans, and we have somebody that's sitting here that's Caucasian that may not have seen it because they're like, okay, well, that was made for African Americans. Right. You and I can have a conversation, but you and I and this other person can't. Right. But if it's something that's geared towards people in general, we all can have a water cooler conversation about what's going on that show. And I think that that's been the lure of Anacostia for so long. It's an African American predominantly staffed show, but what's going on in the show is universal to all races.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that I've talked about before in terms of universal storytelling, right? And I definitely think the characters, the diversity of the characters reflects that. And you can pick any character and you can say, oh, that could be me, or I can relate to that person. That's amazing. I guess another question that I have, so you just came out with season 4.
Right.
and there was a little bit of a gap, which we talked about between season 3 to season 4. But man, when I just recently watched the end season finale of season 3,
Right.
that was like, I mean, I don't want to say Empire type stuff, but like it was amazing. Just in regards to, I think what you were talking about earlier is more so not giving something that's cookie cut,
Right.
that people expect. And so there was a lot of things in the finale that you just weren't necessarily expecting.
Right.
So, just talk a little bit about what went into creating a season finale, like that, where, oh my goodness.
Well, the culmination of season 3 was a same-sex marriage between my character Sean and another character by the name of Julian. And halfway through the season, we got introduced to a character a female character who used to date Julian in high school and hadn't really let that go, even though he was gay. She still was holding on to it. I don't know what he really did to her in high school.
Right.
But her husband was this religious nutcase that really took his job seriously. And little by little, he started to unravel. And so he sort of funneled all of his attention on this gay wedding. And what became something started out that's so small, it sort of escalated and got out of control to where you get to the season finale at the wedding, and all heck breaks loose at that wedding.
Right.
I was really proud of that season finale because leading up to it, a lot of people had thoughts of what they thought was going to happen at the season finale, but they didn't expect that.
Right.
And so when it happened and we saw the reaction to it, I said, I know that we had the effect that I wanted was achieved. The only problem that I had about that finale is that we had a huge problem getting the location for it with the African American churches.
Okay.
When I spoke to them, they said, oh, sure, fine, sounds good. When we went more in detail with them and told them that we would be doing that we would be filming what was a gay marriage in the wedding, they shut it down. They were like, no, you can't film here. You can film anything else here, but you cannot film that. And so that was kind of disheartening, especially from the African-American black church, where there are probably more sinners than, but
right. No, but I want to get into this because we talked a little bit about Empire earlier, right? And obviously Lee Daniels had said he wanted to blow the lid off of homosexuality in the black community and everything. And obviously, Anacostia was attacking this before Empire. Shade. That's how you throw. You taught me how to throw shade, right?
That's called throwing shade right there.
All right, but no,
and it's true shade.
But in all seriousness, though, did you go into the series with that in mind, and especially in season 3, as you're kind of saying, art imitating life, or vice versa. But I find that interesting that what you're fighting in the season,
right,
actually to just to get a church, because I did notice in the episode 1 of season 4, it seemed like it was green screened. Was that correct?
No.
I wasn't.
No.
That was okay.
No. That actually was a church.
Okay.
That was a Caucasian church. That was a Caucasian church.
Another lesson in shade from Anthony.
That's just, when you need something done, you go to the Caucasians. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying. Speak the truth, shame the devil, Anyway, back, look, I've had some wine and some champagne, okay? You never know what you're going to get today.
Okay.
Okay, but back to what you were saying.
Yes.
Like about that, what I wanted with the character was I knew that there was always a difference between how the black community would perceive a gay character and gay portrayals, as opposed to the Caucasian culture. Like you have a show like I forget the name of it. It used to come on Showtime. Queer as Folk. That show was very popular. On our side, you had The Wire and a character like Omar, which they would consider him in the streets a gay thug. And that seemed to be okay because he had the more street edge to him, to where he can identify. With this show, what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a character who was gay, but his homosexuality had nothing to do with how he was perceived or looked at in the neighborhood. And if anyone ever watches the show, him being gay and his relationship, it's not even something that is thought of as something like, oh wow, they're gay or like they're anything like that. It's something that is part of the community. Right. And I think when you throw so much into it and you try to avoid certain things, that's when you start to fail. And subsequently, I've seen so many other web series to come out behind Anacostia that feature gay characters, and it seems like the work that we have tried to do to sort of break down stereotypes of how people see homosexuals especially in the African American community, that they have gone back and just completely erased everything that we tried to do, and it sort of pisses me off when I see stuff like that, because not every gay man is the same. And when you have the public at large who thinks that gay men are after somebody's husbands, or they're predators or anything else like that, or they're hypersexualized. Right. When you try to do the difference, someone coming along and having the opposite is just reinforcing that stereotype. Yeah. And so I'm glad that we've gotten letters and we've gotten a lot of support, especially from GLAAD, saying that they really appreciate the portrayal of the gay characters. And then especially with what happens in season 3, it was important that we showed that aspect of it, the protesting and how everything led up to it. And then in season 4, you see that the aftermath of that season 3 finale. And then you see some of those same people who are protesting are now sort of throwing their hands up saying, well, we didn't know that it was going to go that far. You never know it's going to go that far when you get it started. And then when it gets out of your hand, there's nothing that you can do about it. Right.
Wow. Okay. You got to come back on because we got to wrap things up. But obviously, we could talk for a long time. Yeah. But if you don't mind, just tell people where they can find you and Anacostia, the series.
Well, you can find Anacostia on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Anacostia series. We're on Twitter at Anacostia series. We're on Facebook, Anacostia the series. I'm linked to every last one of those pages, so you can find me that way. And I'm looking forward to what's coming. We have a tremendous finale planned for this season, which is out of this world. It's like real secretive because people like to steal your ideas. So we've kept it really under wraps. So like we're not really going to say like who our guest star is, because some people like to go behind your back and try to take them. but don't think I don't know. But so I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we're gonna have a good time in LA with the cast. Almost the entire cast is going and representing the DMV, and Malice is going, so it's gonna be, and another show from the DMV, Thurston, is gonna be there. So it's gonna be a cabaret.
Well, congratulations. Good luck next week with the ISAs.
Thank you.
And you're always welcome on the couch here at Picture Lock.
Thank you. And my suit is like bananas. Suit's bananas.
That's all for this episode. I'd like to thank my guests, Otessa Ghadar, Phil Cook, Anthony Anderson, and their crew and cast for coming on the show and giving us insight into their lives and their love of web series. You can find Picture Lock on Facebook and Twitter. Don't forget to check out the website, picturelockshow.com, for movie reviews and news, and if you're interested in being a guest on the show. Until next season, I hope you stay locked on film.